Well, hey there, guys, and welcome to the John Campea podcast here on my, John Campea's, YouTube channel. I am humbled and honored you've decided to make this little show a part of your day. This is the day where we talk about all of our favorite things, movies and television, and maybe we sprinkle in some other things here and there. Here's how today's show is going to go. As usual, we've picked out 6 topics that you guys have sent in to me. How do you get a question or topic sent in to me? It's simple. Just email me anytime at thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. That's thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. I have picked out 6 questions and topics from those emails. If you want to get a sneak peek at what those topics are, take a look in the description of this video and you'll get a sneak peek at the questions that got sent in. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's dive right into it today, and we start off today with a question from one of my Patreon supporters, Ryan Wells, and my Patreon supporter, Ryan Wells, writes, "My question is regarding Martin Scorsese's Joker film. I think this could be a huge leap forward for comic book films. We all know how much he loves to work with Leonardo DiCaprio. What do you think the odds are that Leo tries his hand at playing the Clown Prince of Crime?" That's not a phrase we use from him very much anymore. The Clown Prince of Crime. It's a role that has won an Oscar in the past, and I think this being a one-off film headed up by Scorsese could lure Leo in. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Ryan. Yeah, a lot of talk, a lot of buzz about this whole potential standalone Joker film that Scorsese is going to be producing. Todd Phillips will be directing, and I thought Todd Phillips, obviously Hangover, obviously, but I think a lot of people, not enough people, I should say, talk about the film that he recently directed, which was War Dogs, that he did with Miles Teller and Jonah Hill. I actually thought that movie was really good. I had a lot of fun with that. It was deeper than I thought it would be. It was kind of a crime, true story film, but it had a number of moments of levity in there as well that I thought were really sharp and portrayed really well. He did a fantastic job on it. So produced, kind of guided by Martin Scorsese, a Joker film, an early 80s crime Joker film, also then directed by Todd Phillips. I think this sounds fantastic and amazing, and I have been one of the very few people, I know a lot of people out there have been making memes and jumping up and down and complaining about the possibility of Warner Brothers doing one-off films. I think it would be bold. I think it would be really bold because here's the thing, and I've kind of alluded to this before, but it's worth repeating. There are so many stories to tell, so many rich, fantastic stories to tell and ways to tell those stories within the world of comic books, in this case specifically DC comic books, that it seems like a waste to me that you would confine yourself and restrict yourself and limit yourself and handcuff yourself to saying, with all this universe of potential storytelling we can do, we're only going to tell stories that fit within our current DCEU. That seems narrow-minded to me. The idea, it doesn't mean you can just be willy-nilly and do whatever you want and be stupid, but, I mean, come on, does anybody think, forget for a second the issue of whether it's inside the DCEU or outside the DCEU. Does anybody think a gritty taxi driver kind of crime movie set in the early 80s with the Joker produced by Martin Scorsese, does anybody think that sounds bad? Again, forget for a second about whether it's inside the DCEU or outside of it. Does anybody think that sounds bad? If you think that sounds bad, all film is subjective, more power to you, but I kind of think you're nuts at the same time. So I think it sounds wonderful, and I love the idea of some unique one-off standalone, Elseworld kind of movies. I think would be great. And everybody worries, oh, the audience is going to be confused, like the audience eats their pudding and the pudding falls out of their mouth because the audience is just so stupid. The audience will get it. They will understand. Don't worry about it. All it takes is one conversation. My mom will go, I don't get it. I thought the Joker was in this. Is this the same Joker? Is this connected? I'll go, no, Ma, it's using the same character of the Joker, but it's telling a totally unique standalone story outside of that world. Oh, okay. If my mom can get it, your idiot friends, my idiot friends, your idiot cousins, my idiot cousins can understand it, okay? So anybody can understand this. It's very simple. But anyway, let's get back to the real meat of the question here. And the meat of the question, obviously, because I've been talking a lot about this Scorsese Joker thing. Can you tell I'm excited about the prospects of it? Anyway, so the question then becomes, and it's a very valid question. Hey, Scorsese just happens to have made like 5 of his most recent films, not all of them, but 5 of the most recent films. He's made with Leonardo DiCaprio. And he's made not a bad one in the bunch. I mean, hold on a second. Let me pull up the list here. I wrote them. Yay. Gangs of New York, great. Aviator, great. The Departed, fantastic. And it's a remake, by the way, for everybody who likes to poo-poo on remakes. But The Departed, which finally won Martin Scorsese his Best Director of the Year Academy Award, and it won Best Picture as well. Shutter Island, which a lot of people love, and Wolf of Wall Street, which, I mean, they did a fantastic job on. Also starring the aforementioned Jonah Hill. So clearly, Leo has great experiences working with DiCaprio. DiCaprio has a great experience working with Leo. It is unfortunate that Leo had to work with another director to finally get his Best Acting Academy Award when he won his Best Acting Academy Award for The Revenant. But anyway, could we see Martin Scorsese entice Leonardo DiCaprio into portraying a Joker? Should all this happen, and if all this happens, could it be feasible that Martin Scorsese could lure Leonardo DiCaprio in to play the Joker? First of all, let's start if that would be a good idea. I think that would be magnificent. You're talking about one of the best actors in the world, in Leonardo DiCaprio. Pretty much everybody acknowledges that at this point, that Leo DiCaprio is one of the best actors in the world. Getting him on board to play the Joker, and after we've seen him in like Django Unchained and play some little bit off-balance characters, I think that could be amazing. Not to mention he worked side by side with Daniel Day-Lewis when Daniel Day-Lewis was Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York, and seeing him kind of play a slight character that's a little bit like, at least got some of that same sociopathic tendencies that the Joker would also have in it. I think it would be beautiful. So could he lure him? I think so. Would it be a good idea? Absolutely. Would the public get excited about a Leo DiCaprio playing the Joker? I think the public would get excited. Now, here's the one big catch, though, and it's a big catch. DiCaprio loves working with Martin Scorsese as a director. He's worked in those 5 films with Martin Scorsese as his director. Would Leonardo DiCaprio feel like he would want to put himself in Todd Phillips' hands as his director to guide him through playing this very complex character, the Joker? I don't know. I mean, and I say that with all due respect to Todd Phillips. But clearly, Leonardo DiCaprio is an actor who is very picky and choosy about the directors he works with. Okay? He works with Academy-winning level directors, recently at any rate. So could Scorsese get him interested? Maybe, but the question is, like, if Scorsese was directing this, I would put down money that Leo DiCaprio was going to be our Joker. But he's not. He's producing. I believe he's still going to be very heavily involved, but let's call it like it is. When it comes time to start rolling the cameras, the guy in charge is going to be Todd Phillips, sitting in the chair. Okay? And at that point, I just don't know. I don't know. So I would put the odds of, if this movie even happens, okay, and just remember, that's still an if. Until Warner Brothers announces it, it's an if. But if this movie happens, which God, I hope it does, I'd say it's a 20% chance. So not great. A 20% chance that Scorsese could get DiCaprio on board. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. Thanks a lot for the questions, Ryan. All right, now we move on to the next question today. And the next question today comes to us from Jay Ganglani. Ganglani. I hope I'm so bad with names. Anyway, this question comes from Jay, and Jay writes, "Hi, John. I'm a big fan of the show from Hong Kong, and please do keep up the great work." Well, thanks a lot, Jay. My wife, Anne, is actually about to leave me. She's going to Hong Kong for 2 months for work. For Hasbro, she's got a project she's got to take care of over there, and she's going to be over there. So nice to hear from you, Jay. My question is, what are your thoughts and expectations on the upcoming Tom Cruise starrer, American Made? I am personally extremely excited for the film because Tom Cruise and Doug Liman reuniting after Edge of Tomorrow Yeah. Okay, look, I'm going to tell you, first of all, Tom Cruise has got this movie coming out called American Made. You see all the trailers running for it now. When I first heard about American Made, I was interested because I'm a sucker for true life story, like real life bonkers stories that happened in real life. And American Made is one of those stories. So I was interested. And Tom Cruise is an actor I respect very much. I'm like, okay, yeah, Tom Cruise is going to be in there. Hearing that Doug Liman's directing him after they did Edge of Tomorrow together. Okay, yeah, that sounds cool. But I have to admit, I don't know why. I can't explain why. My engine didn't really get revving for it. Like, it sounded good. And the idea of this team from Edge of Tomorrow, and what a fantastic movie Edge of Tomorrow was, Doug Liman directing, Tom Cruise starring. But I wasn't like hyped about it. It's like, oh, this sounds interesting. Okay. But I wasn't hyped. And then the trailer came out. The trailer, which, and you know, granted, asterisks, we've all seen fantastic trailers to terrible movies, but the trailer comes out and it gives us a taste of the temperature, tone, context setting, you know, what this film is going to feel like. And after I got a taste, I wanted the whole dinner. I wanted to watch that movie immediately. I think this movie looks brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And so, whereas before, I was like, yeah, okay, this sounds interesting. Now, knowing all that I know, Tom Cruise starring, based on this incredible story, Doug Liman and Tom Cruise working together again, and I've seen this incredible trailer, I am absolutely nuts, bonkers excited about this movie. It's probably one of my 5 most anticipated movies left in the year. I mean, and that's saying a lot, because there are some big movies coming out between now and the end of December, including a little film with the word Star Wars in front of it. Did I say the word Star Wars? The 2 words Star Wars in front of it. So that's saying a lot. It is one of my 5 most anticipated left this year. I cannot wait to see this. The question, though, is the audience excited? And I don't know yet, to be honest. I'm not, like, it is coming out, right? It is coming out in about a week and a half. And I can see the excitement in the fan community. I can see the excitement in the movie-going community. I can feel that buzz that people have for this movie. And I know a lot of people are going to get out and check it out. I haven't felt that yet for American Made, even though it's got great pedigree. On paper, it's fantastic, and the trailer's been wonderful. I'm not sensing that excitement from the general movie-going audience yet. So while I'm mega hyped to see it, I don't know how it's going to do. I mean, for all I know, it could open to $80 million, which would be insane, or it could open to $8 million. At this point, I don't have a really good sense. I am curious to know what you guys think. How do you think American Made is going to do on its first week? Do you and your friends talk about it? Have you sensed from the people that you talk with that this is a movie they're really looking forward to? Jump into the comments section and let me know your thoughts. All right, thanks a lot, man. We move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Josh Myers, who writes, "You often state that film is subjective. So true. Like all forms of art. I completely agree with this statement. This is why I don't understand why Rotten Tomatoes is used by many to determine the quality of a film." Well, thanks a lot for the question, Josh. And yeah, one of the topics that comes up an awful lot in not just my shows, but like in movie chatting circles in general, and even amongst the studios, is Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is talked about a lot. I love Rotten Tomatoes. But, you know, you're bringing up a great question. How can I, on the one hand, say that all film is subjective, which means there's nothing quantifiable about it? You can't measure it. You cannot definitively say, nobody can beat me in an argument on this. Nobody. Because it just happens to be right. Not because I'm smarter than anybody, but this just happens to be factually true. You cannot definitively say one movie is good and another movie is bad. You can't. You can take a poll, you can take opinions, but you can't definitively say with object truth that one movie is better than another. You can't do it. Why? Because for something to be objectively true, this is just scientific fact, folks. For something to be objectively true, it has to be quantifiably measurable. You have to be able to quantifiably measure it. If you want to say this guy is faster than this guy, that's not opinion. You put them on a starting line, say go, and then you time them. And then you see whichever person crossed that line first in the less amount of time, you can objectively time it. You can measure it. You can say, oh, this giraffe is bigger than this giraffe, is taller than this giraffe. That's not subjective. That's not subjective at all. That's objective. You can measure it. You can pull out a giant tape measure and measure. This giraffe is 21.5 feet tall. This one is 22 feet tall. Therefore, objectively, it's not up for discussion. The empirical data proves that this giraffe is taller than the next. So you cannot say one film is definitively better than the other. You can say, oh, this movie's great and this movie sucks. And that's fair to say. You can say that, yes. As long as it's in the back of your head and in the conversation, you're aware of the fact that what you're really saying is that this movie's awesome in my opinion and this movie sucks in my opinion. I don't think everybody always has to put the words in my opinion at the end, because I think we should just understand that, yes, when we're talking about movies, we all understand it's subjective. So if all film is subjective, and it can't be objectively true unless it's quantifiably, empirically measurable, which you can't do with art. You can't do that with art. You can say, is that color blue? But that doesn't tell you whether it's good or not. Then how come so many people, including people like myself, put such a high value on the Rotten Tomatoes meter? It's like, wait a minute, it seems like you're trying to objectively measure movies which you say can't be objectively measured. That's a fair observation, but here's the big difference. The idea with Rotten Tomatoes is that it doesn't give you an objective measurement of the quality of a film, because nothing can do that. There is nothing to measure. All it can tell you is say, hey, look, we have gathered up 400 film professionals who, do film reviewing and film critiquing and film analysis for a living. And they are vastly different people from each other. One critic is not like another. They're totally different. So you have all these 400 vastly, wildly different types of people who are all happen to be film critics. And out of them, subjectively, 88% of them like the movie. Now, that does not give you an empirical measurement of a film. No. All it's telling you is that, hey, out of all these people with all these subjective opinions, 88% of them liked it. Therefore, there's probably a pretty good chance that you'll like it too. Now, there's still a chance that you won't, absolutely. But if you take this big sample size of people who watch films for a living and all of them are completely different from each other, and 88% of them say they like the film and they thought it's a good movie that you may enjoy, then the odds, it's not telling you definitively, it's not objective truth, it's just giving you odds. It's like, well, then the odds are you'll probably like it. Look, I've seen lots of movies that have high, Rotten Tomatoes readings that I didn't like, because it's not, a 100% foolproof system. It's just a general guide. But if I'm honest, yeah, the movies that have higher ratings, most of the time, I end up liking them. A lot of the movies that have lower ratings, most of the time, I end up not liking them. And there are exceptions to both. There are some movies with low Rotten Tomato ratings that I did like, because all film is subjective. There are Rotten Tomato ratings that are super high that I did not like, because all film is subjective. It's just really generally a good guide. The value of Rotten Tomatoes is not giving you an empirically objective, measurable number. That's not what it's about. It's about saying, hey, the odds are pretty good or pretty poor that you'll end up enjoying this movie. That's all it is. It's just an odds are. So if I get excited, if I see that movie, oh my gosh, this movie's got a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. That means 92% of all these vastly different people ended up liking it. In that case, there's a pretty good shot, not a guarantee, but a pretty good shot that I will end up liking it. And I think most people would be the same way. But that's the value of Rotten Tomatoes. The value of Rotten Tomatoes is that it inherently embraces and understands its role as a subjective tool within this wider scope of people trying to make things objective truth. And it's not. It's a subjective tool, and they seem to understand that, and that's how it should be looked at. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question, man. I'm going to move on now to the next question. And this next question also comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Ali Hussein. And Ali writes, and by the way, if you're interested, what's a Patreon supporter? I do this gig now. I left the corporate world. I decided to leave the corporations that I used to work for to have the freedom to do the type of content I want to do. That's expensive because I'm doing it full time now. I make 70 to 90 videos every month, and I could use some support. My Patreon supporters are people who help make these videos possible. If you're interested in becoming one of my Patreon supporters, check out this URL. I'll also put the link in the description below. And there are certain benefits to being a Patreon supporter. You get all of my podcasts in audio only form as well, so you have that option. We have an exclusive Facebook group. We do exclusive small, like 20 or 30 people, live video chats. It's pretty cool. Check out the link if you're interested. Anyway, enough with the plug. Let's get back to the question. Ali Hussein writes, my question is, what happened to the Thundercats live action movie? I know they announced that a few years ago, and there's been no information for it for years. Yeah, thanks a lot for the question, Ali. You know what? To the best of my knowledge, nobody ever announced anything. I think some reports came out a few years ago. Hey, so-and-so has the rights and they're developing something. But, you never had if I could be wrong here, jump in the comment section and let me know if I'm incorrect. That's the great thing about our community is that it's not all, oh, whatever John says. No, we've got a community here. So if I say something incorrect, which happens, if I say something incorrect, you can jump in the comment section and leave, updates and whatever. So to the best of my knowledge, no studio ever came out and said, we're doing Thundercats. I think there were some reports that came out about some, people getting the rights to Thundercats, somebody trying to develop a Thundercats that then ultimately never went anywhere. About 5 years ago, I thought a Thundercats movie was an inevitability. I really thought it was inevitable. I thought we were absolutely going to get a Thundercats movie. We saw some things with concept art. We saw some animatic stuff because there were certain people trying to develop one and seeing if they could get one off the ground. But nothing ever definitive. It feels like Thundercats and He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, man. They've announced Masters of the Universe now. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just saying I'll believe it when I see it at this point because I've heard so many times over the years, we're doing a Masters of the Universe movie, and it never happens. Anyway, to Thundercats. Then a couple years ago, James McAvoy was being interviewed once, and he said, what would be like your dream thing to do? And he said, Thundercats, man. I would love to do Thundercats. I would love to play Lion-O. And he talked about why it would be so cool to play Lion-O in a character like that. And then one of the best fan-made trailers in the history of fan-made trailers. Somebody, and this is like 8-9 years ago, somebody did this, okay? So keep that in mind. How old it is, the technology they were using will really impress you with what they did. Somebody made a fan-made Thundercats trailer with Brad Pitt, Vin Diesel, a bunch of other people taking clips from their various movies, but then digitally making them look like the different characters. So Brad Pitt, I believe, was Lion-O. Vin Diesel was Panthro. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, Hugh Jackman was Tigra. Anyway, and they cut this together, and it was so good for its time that it actually fooled a bunch of people into thinking, this is an actual Thundercats trailer. It's not. But look it up. Jump on YouTube and search for Vin Diesel, Brad Pitt, Thundercats trailer. And enjoy, because it's really fun. It's really fun what they put together. I'll be honest with you, though. This is one of those situations where every day that passes, every week that passes, every month that passes, every year that passes, I think the likelihood of a Thundercats movie diminishes more and more and more. I believe there will never be a better or a bigger chance that we will get a Thundercats movie than today. Because tomorrow, I believe it's a slightly smaller chance. And then tomorrow, I'll say there will never be a better chance of us getting a Thundercats movie than today. And then the next day will come and the chances will drop a little bit more. So I hope they get it coming, but I personally have not heard really much, anything real anyway, anything solid about a Thundercats movie, which is odd. You would have thought they would have made one of these things by now. But anyway, no such luck at this point. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. And we move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Scott Stephenson. And Scott Stephenson writes, hey, John, big fan. My question is, with Ben Affleck taking on the Red Platoon with Sony, do you think that more or less confirms him being out as Batman? I hate to beat a dead horse, but I loved his Batman and really do not want him gone. Thanks. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Scott. I'll just touch on this for a second. Everybody knows I believe, I've been saying this forever. I've been saying this for almost a year now. I believe there's a 50-50 shot. Maybe it hasn't been that long. Anyway, I've been saying it for a while. There's a 50-50 shot Ben Affleck is actually going to play Batman in the Matt Reeves Batman. But he's out after that. I'm telling you, he's out after that. So, and you can believe that or not believe that if you want. Fine. We'll just wait and see. But anyway. So then the other day, this report comes out that for the first time in 10 years, Ben Affleck is in talks to direct a movie that is not a Warner Brothers film. The last 10 years, the last 3 films that Ben Affleck has directed have all been under the Warner Brothers banner. And now he's in talks with Sony, in talks. It hasn't been announced that it's official, okay? He's in talks. It'll probably happen, but he's in talks. Right now, it's being reported that he is in talks with Sony to direct this great-sounding movie called Red Platoon. And it sounds like a great fit. And Ben Affleck is one of my favorite directors in the business. And this sounds like a movie that would be right up his alley. But I'm going to tell you right now, I honestly don't think, if you're somebody who doesn't think Batman or Ben Affleck is going to be leaving Batman, this story should not change your mind. It shouldn't. I think one has nothing to do with the other. I do think it's interesting that after 10 years exclusively directing for Warner Brothers, he's now leaving to direct for somebody else. But that's fine. I honestly don't think that if it does end up happening and he ends up going over to Sony to direct Red Platoon, I honestly don't think that points one way or the other or has anything to do with whether or not Ben Affleck is going to be Batman, in the first standalone Batman movie or after the first standalone Batman movie. I don't think it proves anything that he's leaving. I don't think it proves anything that he's staying. So honestly, on this issue, I would say don't read into it. I'm not reading into it. It certainly is an eye raiser. I admit that it is. It's an eye raiser. It's like, hey, why is he leaving? Why is he not going to direct his next film for Warner Bros? Sure. But his work as a director and his work as an actor are 2 different things. So I would say don't read anything into it. I really don't think it proves anything one way or the other. All right, thanks a lot for the question, Scott. And we move on now to the last question of the day. And the final question today comes to us from Henry Stevens. And Henry Stevens writes, hello from England. Well, hello from England. I started watching your show this month and love it. Oh, thanks a lot, Henry. I really appreciate that. My question is, what do you think of Daniel Craig coming back as James Bond? Personally, I like Craig. He has been amazing, and Skyfall is my personal number 2 best Bond film. But I believe he wanted out of his contract, and because he is so successful, they said no. So he is putting on a face, but does not want to do this film. What do you think? Yeah, so this really comes from, first of all, Daniel Craig is my all-time favorite Bond. I've said that before. I always say it. I believe he is the perfect amalgamation of the 2 prototype James Bonds. The suave James Bond of Roger Moore. The badass James Bond of Sean Connery. Merged into one. That's what I believe the Daniel Craig James Bond is, because he highlights the great about the 2 prototype James Bonds. And I think that's what makes him the best James Bond we've ever had. And a lot of people can have different opinions on that. That's fine. I'm sure you have a different opinion than me, and that's cool. But to me, I love Daniel Craig as Bond. But what this all really stems from is that a while ago, after not Quantum of Solace, what was the name of the last James Bond? Spectre. After Spectre was about to come out and he was doing the press tour, and people were asking him, are you going to do the next James? Like a reporter asked him once, are you going to do the next James Bond film? He's like, I don't even want to think about it right now. I'd rather shove shards of glass under my skin than do it right now. And a lot of people, totally understandably so, took that as saying, wow, Daniel Craig really hates playing James Bond. He wants out of playing James Bond. And I don't think that was it at all. He went on to explain, he put it in context. He went on to explain, it's like, look, I've been shooting this movie for 6 months, and movies do not normally shoot that long. I've traveled to 5 different countries. I've been away from my family for so long, and he's finally wrapped, and he's done. And then somebody says, what do you think about running out and doing another one? He goes, right now, the idea is like shoving shards of glass in my eyes or whatever he said, like very hyperbole. He used a lot of hyperbole. I'd rather cut off my own dick or something like that than play James Bond again. And people took that as saying, oh, that's it. He doesn't want to play James Bond anymore. I honestly really do believe he only meant that in terms of like asking me that right now makes me feel like I would want to do anything but. I think he loves playing James Bond. He knows the only reason the name Daniel Craig is a household name is because of James Bond. He's a terrific actor. He would have had a career anyway. But the reason Daniel Craig is the household name is James Bond. I believe he really does enjoy playing James Bond. And all he needed was a break. All he was saying was that he needed a break. So, and I believe he loves that paycheck because you know the paycheck he's getting for a James Bond film was a lot better than the paycheck he was getting for Logan Lucky. By the way, if you haven't seen Logan Lucky, please go see Logan Lucky. It's so good. So no, I believe Daniel Craig wants to do Bond. I believe him when he says that. I don't believe he's being forced to do this. I think the studios know it would be less of a headache just to let him walk, even though they could force him to do it. But I think they know it would be less of a headache just to let him walk at that point. But I think they talked to him. They negotiated. I think he wants to do it. I think he's excited about doing it. And I think this will be his last one, I think. And I think he's going to go out on a high note. So anyway, there you go. Those are my thoughts. But you guys might have different thoughts. Jump into the comment section below and let me know what you think. Anyway, guys, that will do it for me for this installment of the John Campea podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Listen, while you're here, take a second, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to my John Campea YouTube channel, keeping up to date on all the videos I do. Like I said, I do like 70 to 90 videos every single month. Become a part of that. Make sure you're following me on social media. I do a lot of announcements and everything on there. Follow me on Twitter, simply @John Campea. That'll do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. And until the next video, bye-bye.